alongside guest star here tonight, Brendan Betty, the old college roommate, good friend of mine, as well as James as well. So, Brendan, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Jared. Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I'm glad I could join you for your show tonight. Ready to talk some sports with you.
Yeah, I feel like it's been one of those things where we've talked about doing some type of podcast together or
Oh,
bringing you on as a guest at some point, and it's really just it's never come together. And finally, after 4.5 years, we get on the air together.
I know. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights or late nights we talked about doing that podcast for fantasy football before before we forget about it a week later and then think about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it was always one of those things like it was always a great idea at the time, and then it'd be like 3 days later, it'd be like, hey, what a podcast? Oh, we don't want to do that. We don't want
were we
to
setting
do
that
that.
up? Were we doing that?
Yeah, it felt like it was one of those things
Yeah,
that came up like every I don't
right.
know, three months maybe was the number
I
where
I
like
think it
it'd be
came up
one
every Sunday when we were watching football, and we were
that
like, we
too.
should do a podcast
That's
on this.
possible as
So
well. We're all sweating out fantasy football matchups, and of
I
course,
know,
probably yelling at the Lions for doing something
most
stupid.
definitely.
What's new there? As they're off to another great start, but I know
Oh
you'll
yeah,
touch on that a little bit later.
we will. We will. Can't forget about them. Especially when we're looking over this past week, especially actually past 3 weeks of what we're gonna talk about how terrible they've been. But we'll see how that works.
Yeah, it's definitely been rough for a Lions fan, but is it who's had it worse so far this year? Lions fans or Falcons fans?
Wow, I really thought that you were going to go with the Browns fans there, because if you would have said the Browns fans, I might have agreed with you for the Browns fans. But I think the Lions fans have had it worst only because of our typical. At least the Falcons have seen a Super Bowl in the past 10 years. So
But I'm talking
uh,
this season, right
you're
here, right
talking this
now.
season right now. I think even the Falcons have a bright side. We've seen Calvin Ridley be probably the number one, wide receiver through these weeks so far. And I mean, they do have some young players. Todd Gurley looks fresh as he's been, especially coming off that injury. But yeah, looking back at what the Lions have, I'm not looking forward to the future as well as I thought I would be at the beginning of the season. So I'd probably say the Falcons or the Lions is my mistake.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. All right, Brendan. Well, I know you've listened to the show a couple times, and JP and I always like to start off asking each other some questions. Kind of brings the entire sports world kind of into the conversation. We can hit on a lot of different topics during these questions because you can kind of go in any direction with these, which is kind of the fun part about it. So,
Right.
I got 5 questions for you. I know you got 5 questions for me. You just want to dive right in?
Let's dive right in, Jared. You want to ask away?
Yeah, yeah. I'll start it off. I'll start it off. A kind of a usual question for me here, but Brendan, in the last week, what has surprised you the most in sports?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, in the times that we're in right now, I don't think anything surprises me too much anymore. But honestly, if I had to look at one major thing that really kind of took me by surprise more than anything else was the Monday night matchup between the Chiefs and the Ravens, which I know we'll touch on more as the segment goes through. But honestly, it shocked me about how bad the Ravens looked. I was expecting that Ravens defense to come out there and give the Chiefs as much of a challenge as the Chargers did the week before. And they really didn't seem so. I thought Mahomes would be under pressure. I thought that, Lamar would be running in some touchdowns. He'd be looking good out there, especially against the Chiefs. And they really didn't. And I thought that, it kind of showed that, as probably most people suspected by now, that the Chiefs are probably the number one team in the NFL right now and looking to repeat for that championship. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, does that sound good, Jared? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point of the defense of the Ravens, and they couldn't get enough pressure on Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's what the Chargers did a really good job of, and I
Right.
think that's why they were able to control that Chiefs offense as well as they did. Mahomes had to make quick throws, he had to move a lot more in the pocket than I think he would like to, and he wasn't really able to just sit back there and wait for Tyreek Hill to finally outrun everyone basically. Because if you
Right.
notice, when Mahomes gets a broken play, it ends up usually being a 50-yard pass to Tyreek Hill. It seems
Right.
like.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like if you give him more than 7 seconds in the pocket on a broken play, it's a 50-yard pass to Tyreek Hill. Like just book it. Like it's easy.
Right. Right.
Um,
Or he's gonna run himself in a touchdown like we saw on Monday night against the Ravens. But he
yeah,
can also do it with his legs, which makes him a different quarterback than
yeah,
Chiefs right
that
now.
too, that too. And it's one of those things too. When he runs, there's usually no one there to stop him because he
Right.
doesn't do it enough where people are going to put a QB spy on him. Plus, you can't take another player out of the secondary away, and then I mean, then he's even going to have a bigger field day, passing the ball. So it's one of those things where you got to get pressure on him and you got to get it quickly. Otherwise, he's just going to destroy you. And really, that's what the Ravens weren't able to do, in the end on defense. They weren't able to pressure him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire found holes as well. So really, I think if you're going to look at that game, I think it definitely goes on the defensive line more than anything. And really, I think if you want to have a chance to beat the Chiefs, it's going to start with a pass rush. Like that's 100% where
Yeah.
it's going to start
No.
because that's how you're going to get Mahomes to make a mistake or not have enough time to throw that deep ball. And that's where they're going to get in a little bit of trouble. Now, I'm not saying they're going to lose because of that, because obviously they still
Right.
beat the Chargers, but it's one of those things where you have to do that if you're going to beat the Chiefs. Have to.
Right. Right. And see, that was something for me was the really thing that surprised me was I thought the Ravens were going to be studying and looking at that tape versus the Chargers and seeing, oh, look at that. Like the Chargers kind of had them on the ropes for a little while. And it looked like they were getting that pressure to Mahomes and they were not letting him get to his massive amount of weapons. I mean, people forget that Sammy Watkins was a top pick in the drafts a few years ago. And you have Tyreek Hill, probably one of the fastest guys in the NFL, mixed with Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, they threw a touchdown to Eric Fisher. Shout out to the Central grad. But I mean, just the amount of weapons, you can't let him have that time. And if you let him have, and even if you let him have the time, but you're scrambling after him, he can still make that cross-body throw that we've seen him make time and time again. So, I think that really took me by surprise this week on Monday. So I think that was a big surprising factor for myself. But all right, Jared, you ready for a question from me?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So I got a hockey question for your first question because I know you're my hockey guy. So, and you know that I'm not as big of a hockey guy as you, but still wanted to get the question to you. So, I actually did not know that the Stanley Cup Finals was on Monday night. Did you know that? I didn't know.
I did know it. I did know it.
I figured you would know, but as just a regular sports fan that I consider myself, I didn't know. And I wanted to know how you felt about if you thought that this Stanley Cup Finals was a little overshadowed by the NBA playoffs, probably COVID as well, but we don't have to get into that a lot. But then also the Monday night game against the Chiefs and the Ravens. How did you feel about that? I know you saw some of the stats that I was looking at and some of the statistics. But yeah, well, what's your feel? What's your feel on that?
Yeah. The NHL has really, really struggled with the viewership in their postseason. They really did. And Monday night was a shining example of that. I mean, the NFL blew them out of the water. And I was really shocked that the NHL stuck to their guns and kept it on Monday night. Like, I think that would have been a perfect Tuesday night game because there's nothing going on in the NFL. There's no college football. NBA's off until tonight. So they would have been the only sport, really, the main sport on. And it would have been game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So really, I'm shocked they didn't change it. I don't think it would have been anything too difficult. Players get an extra day off. I don't think they're ever going to complain about that. But I mean, the NHL moving forward definitely has to figure out how to expand the game because I saw some ratings from Monday night and they got beat out by a rerun of Young Sheldon on CBS.
Is that a fact? Is that true?
So the NHL, I believe it was 2.87 million viewers, which is really nothing for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So 2.87. The Young Sheldon rerun had 2.89 million viewers. Like they got beat out by Young Sheldon on CBS. A rerun, not even a new episode, a rerun.
And
Like,
this was the game winning. This was the end all for the NHL.
yeah, like the Stanley Cup was in the building and young Sheldon's beating you out. Like, you have a problem at that point.
That's
And
right. And
here's the thing
no,
too, like, it's not only an NHL problem actually in this bubble. Like, the NBA is struggling with viewership too. Now I'm interested to see how they're going to compete against, or how they're going to do in the NBA Finals. But like, both of these sports are just getting smoked by football right now. And I saw something too where since the NFL's returned, they have the 15 most top watched like shows or time slots since return. Like, the 15 top viewerships in the last like month and a half has been all NFL games. So they're just destroying the market right now, and the NHL and NBA are just kind of lagging behind. But the NHL is really struggling, and they got to get it. They got to get it figured out, man, because it's one of those things where they have this core group of fans that are never going to leave the sport, but they got to figure out how to grow that to get some general interest in it. Like you said, as an average fan like yourself, you didn't even know it was going on in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals.
I really didn't.
So,
You know how I found out about it? You want to know how I found out about
Twitter?
it? An Instagram tweet or Instagram message by ESPN.
There you go.
Up that the Tampa Bay Lightning won. And I was like, oh, they were on tonight? I was like, wow, I'm sitting there watching the Chiefs game, and here they are raising the Stanley Cup.
Exactly. So. And don't get me wrong, like, playing hockey in August and early September is just weird to begin with. So I think they're already at a disadvantage in that area. But it's still the Stanley Cup Finals, COVID or not, COVID season or not, bubble or not, whatever. It's still the NHL Finals. It's Game 6. Lord Stanley's in the building.
Right.
And there's a good chance that, that the team wins the cup this year in that game. So to have less viewers than young Sheldon, I think there just shows a problem. And I don't, I don't know where it is. Is it marketing of the league? Is it social media is not good enough? Do they not have enough partnerships to get their games out there? Like, that's the thing I don't know what they do. Like,
no, I'm not sure there, Jared. I mean, honestly, I think they better give the NFL a call and figure out what the NFL is working on, because I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know if it's the marketing for the NFL, but I see NFL commercials and markets for NFL players every single time I turn on a sports channel. Anytime that I'm on there, I see that marketing. The games are marketed to me, and I'm not sure if it's just because I'm a football fan and that's what I notice more, but I mean, from the start, as soon as the seasons come back, I've seen commercials for the NFL coming back, its debut. These amazing games that they're having on Monday night, the same game as Stanley Cup final games. I mean, I couldn't tell you that I think I saw one Stanley Cup commercial when I was watching football or watching any other sport on ESPN. I didn't know it was happening. I didn't know. And I felt bad about it after, because I know how much this sport worked and made sure that they could still continue to have their playoffs during the season. And but then again, if you were to ask me, what I would have watched on Monday night, I unfortunately probably would have picked the Chiefs and the Ravens.
Brendan, I didn't even watch, and I'm a big hockey guy. I watched the NFL game. Like, I'm watching Chiefs Ravens 1,000%. Like, I mean, I don't care. Like, I love hockey. I played it, reffed it, broadcasted it. Right. Absolutely love hockey. I was watching Chiefs Ravens. It just,
knowing that you watch Chiefs Ravens instead of the hockey game actually makes me feel a lot better.
Let me ask you this: do you know who the Lightning were playing?
Oh, geez, the Lightning were playing the Dallas Stars.
Okay.
Only because I researched a little bit into who they actually played, and they had like the little Dallas Stars logo on the bottom of the Instagram post. So that was my finding out. Honestly, could I name you a player on the Tampa Bay Lightning? Probably not. So
on the Lightning?
On the Lightning, that's correct. Is Stamkos still there?
Yeah, he is, but he was hurt. But so I'll give you that.
That's my one player.
All right, there you go.
That's how much I know hockey, folks.
All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, Brendan. So do you like this NBA Finals matchup, or do you think it could have been better with a different team out of the East, like the Celtics, the Bucks, the Raptors, or are you happy with what we're seeing?
I love this matchup, Jared. I love the matchup. Honestly, I do so much. I'm going to speak on the Celtics just for a minute because I know that they were the ones that were playing the Heat, and they were the one that had the chance to get into the Eastern Conference or into the actual finals. And I think that team is very young. They got a good future ahead of them with Tatum and Brown and that young core that they have there in Boston. But I just think that they're not ready yet. I think that it's going to take some time for them to really get that together and really get that squad ready to play a team like LeBron and AD and their Lakers team. But honestly, I think to really look at it, this matchup between the Lakers and the Heat is probably exactly what everybody wants. It's the David versus the kind of Goliath team. It's that I'm gonna touch on a little later, but it's that 2004 Pistons team against the 2004 Lakers Kobe and Shaq team. It's the two big dogs of the NBA going against a team that is scrappy. They play hard. They play good defense, and they got positions that can both defend and score on those best guys. I think this is probably one of the best matchups that we could have had. I think watching the Bucks go out early or earlier than they should have was pretty disappointing in my opinion, especially because I thought Giannis was having a great season and that Bucks team looked strong both defensively and shooting wise. But I mean, again, I think the Heat looked the best in the bubble in the East, and I think that they deserve to go up against these Lakers that have pretty much just washed over most of the people that they've played. So yeah, in my opinion, I think this is probably one of the best matchups that we could have asked for, honestly, Jared.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree too much. The only thing I would say is I think come the end of it, I think the Lakers still just kind of dominate the series. Um, I like it's been a really easy path for the Lakers so far. I think, to be honest, like
Do you think they sweep them?
no. I think
Okay,
the
just making
Heat.
sure.
No, I'm not gonna say sweep. The Heat will get game. I think the Heat will either win game like 1 or 2, and I'll go Lakers in 5,
Oh, wow.
possibly 6. But and JP, I talked to him yesterday. He made a good point. He's like, I can 100% see this series being 2-2 after 4 games, which I kind of agree. I just think after that, that's where LeBron and AD are going to take over. So I think the Heat are going to give them a run. And I'm saying this too. I think it's going to be a great matchup because I think every game's going to be a pretty close game. Like, I don't think you're going to see a blowout one way or another. I just think when push comes to shove, the Lakers are just going to have that edge just a little bit to where they can make the buckets down the stretch or make the stop down the stretch. So
I agree with you there. Do you think that there? I mean, I know you asked me this question, but I'll fire it back at you. Do you think that there's someone that could have had a little bit more of an edge, or do you think that the Heat's it?
I mean, I don't know because I
know
think
the East is hard.
yeah, no, because I think the Celtics have the talent to compete with them, but they just can't quite put that talent together yet in a 48-minute game and 7-game
Yeah, I couldn't
series.
agree more with you.
So that's tough. The Raptors, I liked them to come out of the East. I thought they could have done some damage. I just think at the end they just didn't quite have that one player or enough talent to keep it going. And the Bucks, who knows, man? I mean, Giannis, sure, he would have been great in the series probably, but are they good enough in other aspects? So I think it is one of the best series we could have gotten, to be honest. And so that's definitely good. And I think it shows too. I think every game's going to be pretty close. Like, I don't think you're going to see a game over 7 points in this entire series. And I think a lot of games are going to be 2 3-point games with 2 3 minutes left, and then I think one team will kind of just pull away slowly and win by 6 or 7, basically.
Oh, I agree with you. Definitely, I agree. I mean, looking at what you were talking about with just like that kind of like that 7 point window, I could definitely see that being, going through even more games, 6 7 games even. I could see him pushing it that far, especially because of how physically I've watched the Heat play in this bubble and in the playoffs so far. I mean, that team just honestly looks like they're having fun out there, Jared. I mean, they look like they're having fun. They're having fun in practices. And, I mean, they're just going out and playing as a team. I mean, they've said it multiple times that no one on that team is the scorer, quote unquote. And so, who's going to be the guy? And they like to play team basketball. And I think, honestly, I think the Lakers might have a little bit harder of a time playing against them offensively because of the Heat's defense. I don't think that Anthony Davis has played anyone as good defensively as Bam Adebayo yet in these playoffs. If I'm wrong, you can definitely step in and correct me, but I think Bam Adebayo might be the best defender that he'll play in these playoffs so far. I think that might be a big key in the series because we've watched him time and time again play against these big men and do well because he's averaging decent amount of block per game. I have his rebounding stats. I mean, over 10. And so I just think that he's going to give him some trouble down in their paint. And we saw, even in, I'll jump it back, all the way to the first game back against Damian Lillard and those Portland Trailblazers, when Anthony Davis didn't show up, we saw the Lakers kind of fall apart. And we watched LeBron, again, do his thing, but not as well if Anthony Davis is doing his thing. And so I think that could be kind of a disruption, and we're going to see a dogfight. So I'm excited for it, honestly.
And before we move on to the next question, you said something I really liked, and I was actually going to mention it, and you kind of read my mind there, was I loved that Jimmy Butler quote of where he scored a lot of points in one game, and I think it was a reporter asked him, like, hey, are you, or sort of like, is this kind of mean, is this going to show that you're kind of the guy? He goes, no, man, he was basically like, no, who's ever got the hot hand, man, he's going to score. And you saw it with Tyler Hero. Bam's had 28 points in this, 28, 30 points. Other guys have stepped up. Duncan Robinson's made like 8 threes in a game. Like, it is crazy that like he said that, and we are literally seeing that come to fruition, and I kind of love it.
I love it. He's got the Patriots running back dynamic in his team. So whoever's going to show up on tonight, that's who's going to score the most. So we're going to love to see it.
All right, Brendan. Next question.
Jared, you ready for a question?
Yep.
All right, I got one for you. We're going to stick with the NBA here, but we're going to go with talking about the other LA team, people right across the street, or actually in the Staples Center still, but the Clippers. So after suffering that defeat to the Nuggets, do you think the Clippers, from now on or for these next few years should be sticking with that program? Do you think they should be maybe rebuilding around Kawhi for the near future? And then also, I mean, we can also touch on, where do you think Doc would best fit? I mean, now, are they going to just run with Tyronn Lue for the coach? Are they going to move on to someone else? What are we thinking here, Jared? What's your opinion on the Clippers?
All right, so I'm gonna focus on the first part of that first with the stick with the program
let's
type of thing.
About the rebuilding
yeah.
And about
so
the rebuilding around Kawhi.
Yeah, so they definitely have to stick with the program. Like, no doubt about it. They have way too much talent. I don't think you can get rid of Paul George even if you really wanted to. They would want too much in return. The salary's high. People I feel like are
so much to get him.
Well, that too. And I feel like people are starting to realize, all right, maybe he's not as good as we think type of deal. And here's the thing too, and you just kind of said it, is I don't even think they'd have the option to kind of rebuild because their next 4 first-round picks are in OKC's hands. Like, they don't get a first-round pick for the next 4 years unless they make another trade or something like that. So, I don't think that's even an option. Like, you have to stick it out. You went all in, and this is where you're at. Now, I think very easily that if, next year Paul George just plays a little bit better, Kawhi plays a little bit better, like, they could easily make a run and get to the NBA Finals. So I think
in the playoffs, though, correct?
What?
Like, they got to step it up in the playoffs.
Yes,
like,
yeah, oh yeah. No, regular season they were fine. I'm saying they each have to play better. They each have to play better in the playoffs. So, and if they do that, and I don't think it's that hard for them to do that. Like, they both struggled. Like, even Kawhi did. Like, Kawhi looked nothing like he did last year with the Toronto team this year. So, I think you definitely got to stick it out and see what happens. I think it would be, I think it'd be shameful and everyone should sell that team if he decides to go the route of trying to kind of rebuild it. Like, that's just, I think that's a little too much of an overreaction. I think they're going to be just fine. They'll probably be a top 3 seed in the West next year. And we'll just see if they can perform a little bit better in the playoffs. And maybe getting rid of Doc Rivers gets them over that stepping stone. We've seen plenty of examples in sports where a team is so close, but they always have heartbreak. And finally, they decide to move on the coach and try something else, and it works. Toronto Raptors with Dwayne Casey and Nick Nurse last year. First year new coach, they finally did it. Now, I know they finally didn't have to go through LeBron in the East or LeBron in the finals, and they got a beat-up team in the Warriors, but still, they finally did it. That change of scenery helped, basically. And it can be the littlest of things that just gets the team to play a little bit better, a little bit harder, and that's what gets them over the step. So I think they definitely got to stick to plan. I think they could easily win a championship. I shouldn't say easily. I think they can win a championship, though, in the next 3 years still with that team. Like, they have enough pieces. And I think the bubble kind of hurt them. I don't think. I think Paul George struggled in the bubble. I don't think Kawhi loved the bubble. Like,
No.
Kawhi, when he's off the court, he's done with basketball. Like, he'll come back, show up for practice in the next game and be good, but he's done with basketball. So I don't think that worked too well for him to be around basketball as much as he was. And Paul George just was in his own head being in that bubble. So I think that hurts.
Right.
So I think that's a team that improves greatly being outside of a bubble. So I think that did hinder him a little bit. And I don't think you can blow it up or be too upset because of the circumstances have been so strange that, like, you don't know what players were going through, their family was going through. Like, you just don't know.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, no, I agree with you.
Lou Will,
I can't agree with you more. Yeah, Lou Will. I was
like,
just
he
about
ended
to
up
touch-
at a strip club buying wings. So, like, there you go.
I was going to touch on Lou Will a little bit, and I remember a while back. I can't remember the analyst's name, but I will recall it later in the show. But they talked about when they first put together this LA Clippers team that they looked like they were going to be the team to come out of the West, and that they all looked like they just loved being in LA. Like, they loved LA. You know, they didn't sign up to play their playoffs all in Orlando and be down there confined in this bubble. You know, I mean, they signed up to be playing in the Staples Center, to be putting on a show for their crowd and their fans against, you know, whoever the heck is going to come into their matchup. And so I think you're right. I couldn't agree with you more, Jared, that I think they had a really hard time down there in that bubble. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do next season. I also would not, you know, blow up this team. I think they threw all of their chips, you know, into the middle of the table. And it didn't work this time, but I think that if you give it a whirl in the next 2 years, I think that this team's chemistry could definitely improve. You know, did it hurt that, you know, maybe they were kind of getting in their head a little bit about maybe LeBron and Anthony Davis coming up? Maybe they were worried about that LA matchup, but, you know, they had to stick it out and get through these series, and they didn't. But I think they'll be back next season tenfold.
You know what is kind of the blessing in disguise with them with them losing to the Nuggets is that the first playoff series that we get to see between the Clippers and the Lakers is going to be in Staples Center.
I like that. Yeah, that's
you know
a
what?
Good point.
Because I think that would have been just like such a sorrow victory. Like, we get this matchup and they're in a bubble. Because, like, here's the thing. Like, Game 6, NBA Western Conference Finals, at the Staples, like, all 7 games are at the Staples Center. Like, who shows up more? Like, do we got 75% Lakers, 25% Clipper fans, 50-50? Like, what does this stadium look like? I mean, you're probably going to have fights left and right in that stadium during a game.
Could not imagine.
Like, it's going to be, like, that's like entertainment value 100. Like, that's going to be fantastic. So, in a way, I'm kind of glad we get to see that in person. Let me say it. Hopefully we get to see that in person with fans.
Keep our fingers crossed for that, Jared.
Yeah, let's not guarantee that or anything. And you know, so that'll be, I think, fun, and it'll definitely happen. They'll go against each other in the Western Conference Finals in the next couple of years. Like, it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be awesome. That's what I'll say. Moving on. So Doc's best fit. I texted you guys I think it was a couple hours after he got fired. I texted you and JP. I go, mark my words right now, Doc Rivers is going to the Thunder.
I was shocked with your text.
He goes back and joins Shai Alexander. Not going to try that middle name, whatever it is. Not worth it. He's going to go join Shai. He's going to get his 4 first-round picks back, and he's going to coach a team that actually got to the playoffs and also lost their star coach, Billy Donovan. Right. I think he's a great fit there. I really do. I think he knows the team. He knows a couple of guys on the team, especially Shai. Shai's young. 4 first-round picks. They did make the playoffs, so they're not a bottom-of-the-barrel team. And I think that's a really good fit for him. And I think it kind of takes him out of, like, a huge market for once in his career, kind of, or once in a really long time, to where maybe he can just focus on basketball, focus on coaching, building up these young guys. And I think it can be really good for Doc Rivers, and I think that's where he ends up.
I actually tend to agree with you, Jared. When you first sent that text, I was a little shocked by your choice. I was. I didn't know how I felt about him going to OKC and like you said, kind of being out of that big market and maybe getting a chance to really like mold the team now with these picks. Like he can kind of assist in building this team if he were to go to OKC and really building the team that him and everyone there in OKC wants to see. And being put back together with Shai Alexander, who is a fantastic point guard, and then hopefully Chris Paul and that team that made it, to the West playoffs, who actually looked very good throughout this past bubble. And I agree with you. I really think that he could be a good fit there, and I really wish him well because he's been championship coach, great coach, and I wish him well to whatever team he goes to.
All right, everyone, you're listening to James and the Agent here on 12 Ounce Sports. Myself, Jared, the Agent Nyland, alongside guest star tonight, Brendan Betty, the old college roommate, good friend of JP and I's, and it's been a fun first 30 minutes. Hope you're having a good time, Brendan. But let's keep it rolling here.
Oh, I'm having a great time, Jared.
Perfect. All right, next question, Brendan. Who's got the best chance to come out of the NFC after 3 weeks?
Oh, geez, you're not going to like my answer, Jared, but
I know I'm not.
I got to talk about him. I think that the Seattle Seahawks are definitely the team that look like they have the best chance to come out of the NFC after 3 weeks. I honestly could talk about an hour about Russell Wilson because this man has just done it season after season, extending plays, perfect passes down the field to these now amazing receiver core that they've given him. Him and Tyler Lockett over the past few years have just gotten more and more, connected with each other. DK Metcalf, the guy that a lot of teams skipped on in his draft, is now looking like, one of the best young wide receivers. And so, honestly, I just think that the Seattle team, also by adding Jamal Adams, has really revamped that defense there. They're 3-0. They've beaten people. They beat the Cowboys. They've continued to beat whoever that comes in their way. They beat the Patriots. It was a close game, I know, but that Patriots team has also looked good, which I know we'll touch on later. But that Seattle team, I think, has just looked like they are the team to beat in the NFC. And I didn't think I'd be saying that at the beginning of the season. You and James both asked me, who I thought might come out of this NFC, and I said the Seahawks, and I know you guys were like, oh, he's getting on that Seattle bandwagon. But I honestly, looking at what they've done so far, like I'm confident in my pick even more. I think honestly all the chips have to be pushed in with Russell Wilson at this point, and I've been shocked about how well Jamal Adams has continued to revamp that defense. He is in there on every play, Jared. Every play, I am seeing Jamal Adams either in the backfield, on the tackle, breaking up passes. I couldn't be more happy with the way that he's played there in Seattle. Could be a jersey buy in my future, maybe. So, but yeah, I think I'd have to pick Seattle for you there, Jared.
All right, interesting. I think the reason I asked the question is because I truly believe you could go a numerous amount of ways. Like with the NFC, you could go so many different ways. Like, I mean,
tell me a few of these ways, Jared. What do you think?
I mean, you could definitely get on Green Bay for winning the NFC. Mm-hmm. They've looked really good. Well, Aaron Rodgers
is looking like he's having one of the best seasons we've seen in years.
Exactly. Plus, Aaron Jones has been really good for him as well.
Of course,
defense looks good. You move on to the NFC South. I think you can make arguments for the Buccaneers. They've looked, I think, already better than I expected. I think Week 1 was. Really? I think Week 1 is going to end up being one of those like flawed weeks for them where they're just so new together that it didn't click that first week, and I think they would have been a lot better Week 1 if they would have had like preseason.
Right, and they had just acquired Leonard Fournette, so he wasn't really a super big part of the game plan, which we're seeing more now.
Yeah, that too, and I mean, sure the Saints are 1-2, but their losses, I mean. The Packers are a good team. I think Las Vegas is a pretty good team as well. So they could rebound. Drew Brees has to get better, but I think they could, if they get hot, they're a contender. And then you could make an argument for every single team in the NFC West. Seattle, Arizona, Rams, San Fran. Like I could map
Oh,
out
Jared, are
a
you?
plan.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. I had to ask though, Jared. With San Francisco injuries, do you think that hinders them a little
Oh,
bit
it
for your choice
definitely
of them making it through?
it definitely hinders them, but I mean they're still, they just were in the Super Bowl last year. They,
Mm-hmm.
Garoppolo's injury doesn't seem to be too serious. I think
No.
they still have enough guys on defense to have an okay defense. And I think they might
Oh
have
yeah,
enough
no.
power offensively to score some points a few games. So
Yeah, of
I'm not
course.
saying they're going to or anything like that. I'm just saying you could map out a plan. And that's what I
Sure.
found so interesting about this question is
Mm.
you can make an argument for an entire
For a
division
lot of
to win the
sure.
NFC.
Sure.
So
Honestly, I think the reason that I jumped so fast to those Seahawks was because after watching them go 3-0, and even listening to your guys' segment last week and talking about the 2-0 teams, just seeing Russell Wilson play in the game just last week, just some of these passes that he makes. I know that, I mean, you could look back years and years and see some of these teardrop passes that he's thrown into receivers, but he is just like continuing to get more and more accurate as the season goes on. And now he actually has more weapons. They're building him young weapons. I know Chris Carson had just had his injury, but he looks more involved in the passing game than ever before. I think week he had 2 receiving touchdowns. I mean, that was something that we hadn't seen from Chris Carson in the past few years, and it's something really interesting in Seattle's game plan. And I think Pete Carroll has continued to be that great coach. And like I've said, I think that Seattle defense just always has had the will to win, and adding Jamal Adams, that leader that they needed back there, really has put them over the edge. But honestly, I could see the argument for anyone in their division. I mean, like you said, the Arizona Cardinals and DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, they look like they're out for vengeance after Kyler Murray's, first season or so. And DeAndre Hopkins looked pretty happy to be with a quarterback that can not only throw the ball to him, but can run away from getting sacked. So I think that there's a lot of good teams that out of the NFC that could be good, but it might all be for nothing if we see him play the Chiefs. So we'll see how they will. The Chiefs is my test now to go to if he can win. So
Gotcha. Alrighty, let's move on to your third question.
all right, Jared. So I got a Lions question for you.
All right.
I'm sorry to do this to you. I got a Lions question for you. So being the Lions fans that we are, I know that we got our first victory last week. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and I wanted to give you a scale. And I wanted to know on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not very impressed, to 10 being, very, very impressed, and you're very interested in the rest of the season. How does this victory make you feel, Jared, on a scale of 1 to 10 and impressed? How do you feel about it?
A 3?
I know this is hard for you.
I'm going to go with 3 because...
Why a 3, Jared?
I mean, parts did look better. Defense looked better. They forced 3 turnovers. They had a little bit more pressure on the quarterback than what we've seen. But the 3 turnovers is the big key there, and is really I think the reason they won that game. But at the same time, they're still 1-2. They blew a huge lead against the Bears, which the Bears at 3-0 are a very, very weak 3-0 team.
Very interesting.
Blowing a double-digit lead against the Pack. So I'm not going to get too crazy. And I'm going to say, sure, did the defense look better? Yeah. Did Kyler Murray play bad? Yeah. I think both facts are true. I mean, everyone was crazy about Jeff Okudah's interception, but when you really look at that play, Hopkins had him beaten, and Murray just didn't throw a great ball, and Okudah was able to close that gap. Yeah. So, let's not get crazy on him. He's still going through some growing pains and things like that. But, I mean, good for him, and it was a great play. But I'm just saying, Kyler Murray was just off. He was just off. And I honestly don't believe we exactly brought that out of him to be off. I think a lot of it was self-inflicted.
Sure. So would you then say that, if I were to ask you, do you think the Lions won that game, or do you think the Cardinals lost it?
This is a
Because I
horrible
know you
answer,
said
but
Kyler Murray played. He
little
did
bit of
not play his
both.
best.
Little bit
A
of
little bit of
both.
both.
Because
Okay.
sure, the Cardinals made those mistakes, but then at the same time, the Lions took advantage of those plays.
Sure.
Like,
Which we have not seen them take advantage in the past.
no,
So
no.
it's
So
been
credit
different.
to them. They did it. They got it done. But I'll go a little bit in between. I don't,
Okay.
grand
That's
scheme of
fair enough.
things, moving forward, I don't think.
We tied them last year, so I'll take a tie on that question.
Yeah,
So.
and going forward, I don't think it makes the Lions a good team, and I don't think it knocks the Cardinals down too much. It's one of those games where the Lions always win a few a year where they shouldn't, and the Cardinals aren't that dominant team yet where they're going to drop a couple games that surprise you.
So does this win have you excited, more excited than for next week, or not, Jared? What are you thinking? Does this win kind of put your eyes glued to the TV again next week, thinking for a victory?
I wouldn't go glued to the TV, but I'll probably tune in a little bit more. I think if they're 2-2, I'm definitely watching the full game in the next after the bye week, like 100%.
Right, I agree.
But it's a long way to go. Like I could see Drew Brees throwing for 425 against us if Michael Thomas plays. Dude, man, talk about a brutal way to start your career for Jeff Okudah. You go Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, and then Michael Thomas.
Yeah, right. And I mean, he's going to be seeing these top receivers. I mean, I love it and I hate it though, Jared. I mean, I think that I have to kind of pinpoint on the fact that, I mean, even though he has played these top receivers in his first few weeks, aren't those going to be the receivers that we're going to be expecting him as Lions fans to see and deal with? I mean, I hate to jump back to Jalen Ramsey, but I mean, even in his rookie season, we did see him guard those guys at a top-notch level. And I think that's what people were hoping for out of him. And I think he's done an okay job. I won't knock him at all. I know he was injured at the beginning of the season. And like you said, I mean, I think the pick was good, was a little underthrown, yes. But, I guess I'm having trouble figuring out if I'm excited or disappointed in Okudah's start so far. But I hopefully through the rest of the season I can make a decision on that.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Brendan, next question for you here. Have the Patriots shocked you by how good they look so far?
I'm so shocked, Jared. Honestly, I think by saying that I'm so shocked, I think the person that I'm most shocked with is probably Cam Newton. I think that I'm not shocked with Bill Belichick. I knew that he was going to have something in his bag of tricks to, make Cam feel comfortable, make him feel like he's part of the team, and make him, feel okay with actually running the ball, which was something that, he didn't have with Tom Brady. So I'm not shocked at all with Belichick. What I'm more shocked with is how Cam Newton has reacted to being the Patriots starting quarterback. Like, regardless of if he's an MVP, which he is, and he made it to the Super Bowl, but he had huge shoes to fill with Tom Brady leaving and going to Tampa Bay. And I think that he has more than filled those so far. I mean, I think that they're hard shoes to fill, and I know I'm kind of jumping the gun on Tom Brady having 6 championships, but I think honestly this is the best case scenario for Patriots fans for how they were looking at the season. I mean, their only loss on the season is against the Seahawks that I chose to come out of the NFC. And honestly, they almost won that game. They lost that on a goal line stand, Jared. That was one play away from us talking about the Patriots being 3-0 again for another season. So, yeah, I'm pretty shocked with how they played, but honestly, I think for the rest of the season, I won't be shocked, if that makes sense. Like, now that they have shown that they can play at this level, it's kind of what I'm going to be expecting from Bill Belichick and Cam Newton every week. Like, I think I'm going to be expecting Cam Newton to look like, not 100% his old self, but definitely something similar to it. And I think that Bill Belichick has found a way to awaken that Superman Cam that we're missing a little bit, and he's leading that team like a pro. And yeah, I give him kudos for that.
And going back to that Seattle game, man, I thought, I really think they should have won that game, to be honest. And honestly, looking at that final play, I didn't love the play call. Like, you knew what you were doing, they knew what you were doing, and it got blown up. Why not fake Cam takes a step in, rolls back out. You
Right.
find a tight end in the flat, running back in the like. I don't know. It felt like they should have switched up the play calling there at the end. But yeah, I mean, like you said, they could easily be 3-0 right now, and they've looked. I thought they were going to be solid with Cam, but
Mhm.
they've looked even better than solid. Like they've looked really good, and I think
Most
they're
definitely.
just. And I honestly, if Cam stays healthy, I think they're going to get better as the season goes on.
I could agree. And hey, Jared, it's another one of those Patriots Seahawks blown calls on the goal line that we love so much. So
Yep.
have to bring it back to that. But yeah, honestly, I couldn't agree with you more there. All right, Jared, you ready for my fourth question?
Let's do it.
All right, sir. So we're gonna go over to the AFC, to the team that everybody loves, and that's the Chiefs. Who is going to stop them, Jared? Is there anybody? Can anybody stop this Chiefs pandemonium that we're all seeing? From the AFC, from the NFC. Who has the best chance of beating the Chiefs this season, and why do you think that, Jared? Tell me.
So the best chance, I think it's actually going to be the Patriots.
Wow.
I
Okay. You got to tell me why.
and the reason is I think they have a good enough defense where they can confuse Mahomes and maybe hold him to 28 points, let's say. And I think Cam is good enough to score enough points against him. So you're going to have the experience of Bill Belichick with the revamped offense, a little bit of the Patriots, and I think it could work. I really do. Now, I'm going to give you one other team too, because I'd almost put these
All right.
guys hand in hand. I think the Steelers could give them some trouble
Wow. Okay.
because, like a lot like the
It's
Patriots.
gotta be for the defense, right, Jared?
Well,
It's the
yeah,
defense.
100%. It's the defense. Like that defense could hold them to 21, 24 points, I think,
Sure.
and
Oh,
they
I
can
agree.
get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And with Big Ben, another example of that offense is solid enough against the Chiefs defense where they could put up 24, 27, 28 points, and if they score 27 and defense holds the Chiefs to 24, well there you go, you got to win. So I think that's where I would start off in the AFC is New England and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I other than that, I don't know.
We
I
get
don't
to
think
see that. We get to see that New England matchup next week.
we
Jared.
do. We do.
Yeah.
That's
So
going to be interesting. That's definitely going to be interesting. And then you go to the NFC, and I don't think there's a team in the NFC.
don't have a team out of the NFC, really.
I like if the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl, they win. Like I mean,
Wow.
the one I they
You're
will.
not one to usually give up so fast on the NFC, Jared.
No, man. See,
I
here's the
wasn't
thing.
expecting it.
Mahomes will shred that Packers defense, and Rodgers wouldn't be able to keep up. The Bucks
What a,
are gonna get. They'd give up 45 points, in my opinion.
Okay.
Same with New
what do you
Orleans.
what do you think about that Seahawks?
Well, I was
What
the
do you think?
Seahawks. That they'd probably be my favorite to do it, but I don't think they can get enough pressure, like we talked about earlier, on how, and that's how the key to stop Mahomes. I don't think they can get
Right.
enough pressure to do it. And
Right.
as good as Jamal Adams is, like you talked about, one safety's not going to stop Patrick Mahomes. Like, just not going to happen. And sure, they can put up the points, but I think push come to shove, the Chiefs would just outscore them. Like, and I think it'd be easy. So
Yeah.
I'll go with the old school AFC teams, man. Pittsburgh, New England. I'll keep with them until they prove me otherwise. Like honestly, like it's hard to say that they're still not the two dominant teams. Like Pittsburgh kind of had a weird year last year with the injuries and all that
Right.
and all that. You got Mason Rudolph as your quarterback. Good luck. Um,
Right.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, I'll stick with the Patriots and the Steelers. That's who I'll go
I
with.
probably have to agree with you there, Jared. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. Especially, I'm excited to see. Honestly, we get to see that New England matchup next week, so probably have a little bit better of a test subject there when we see that. But I did see that the Chiefs are not going to be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in their regular season this year, so we'll have to wait till the playoffs maybe to see them. But yeah, I like both those picks, and honestly, it's probably more for defensive and strategy purposes because I don't think you can ever truly shut down all those weapons on that Chiefs team. It's definitely not for a full game. Mostly just about limiting, and I think you're right. I think both those teams can limit them, and as much as I'd like to say that the Seahawks could, I don't. I think you're right. I don't think Jamal Adams alone can guard everyone on the field. So I think Mahomes would find a way around that pretty quick.
Alrighty, Brendan. I think I already know your answer. Who's your early MVP after 3 weeks?
So you think you know my answer, but I'm actually going to change it. So
Wow.
we're going to change it up on you a little bit. You know, honestly, like I think he deserves it so much. I love that Lamar won it last year, but I think that he probably deserved it last year too. And I mean, I'm just going to go with the cliche Patrick Mahomes, Jared. Like, I just think Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable player in football. I mean, just watching him one by one by one, pass after pass, just totally deplete a Ravens defense that I thought was going to be one of the best defenses in football this season, especially after watching the first 2 games. I mean, it really wasn't even close. I mean, the score might say different, but I mean, really, it wasn't. And I mean, he was teardropping across the field passes. I mean, changing his body motion. I mean, and honestly, with the adding of Clyde Edwards, I mean, he hit Clyde Edwards in the past game a few times too. I mean, I recall one play on Monday night where the linebacker from across the field, I'm fairly sure it was Judon, came in across Mahomes' left-hand side, and he saw that, read that at the line of scrimmage, and he hit Clyde Edwards as soon as he came out of the backfield, and Clyde Edwards went around for like 15, 20 yards. And they talked about that for a good 15 minutes about how smart that play was. And honestly, I didn't realize how smart it was until I realized that he had to check that linebacker at the last second rushing in on him. And I really think that Patrick Mahomes, there's really no argument. I mean, the man just got paid more than we've seen anyone get paid. And the funniest thing is that I didn't hear a lot of people complaining. Most of the people I talked to were like, oh, yeah, Jared, he deserves that. He deserves that. Like, he needs that money because he's worth every penny.
100%.
And I think him with Andy Reid, it's almost unstoppable. And I think that he definitely deserves the most valuable player because I think that if you take him away from that team, they still have a lot of offensive weapons, but they might lose that creativity that gets those weapons the ball and that danger behind center. So I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to have to be my MVP this season, Jared, just through the first 3 weeks, but I highly doubt he's going to slow down in the next 13 games. So I'm excited to see it, though.
Sounds good. All right, go ahead. 5th question.
All right, 5th question for you, Jared. Final question. So who do you believe in the NFL, looking at this season just through the first few weeks, could be in the next, I like to give you a range, 3 to 5 seasons. What team do you think could be the number 1 seed in 3 to 5 years? Maybe they're not the number 1 seed right now. Maybe they're close right now, but in the next 3 to 5 years, who do you see? Who do you think is going to have the talent? You know, who makes the smartest picks in the draft that's going to get them to be that number 1 seed in the NFL?
All right.
In a few years, Jared.
So I'm going to give you one in each conference.
All right.
I'll start with the AFC. And the AFC, I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay,
Joe Burrow looks fantastic. He looks everything that we thought he would be, which you don't always see as a first-round pick or as a first overall pick with that much hype. But he's actually probably been better than I thought he was going to be. Like, he stepped right out of LSU and has picked it right up. Like, he's playing amazing. That offense is really good if you look at it. Like, I know A.J. Green's, getting older and injury prone and things like that, but he's playing solid. T. Higgins had 2 touchdowns this past week. He's looked okay. Yeah. Tyler Boyd has been really good as well. Joe Mixon's been good. Giovanni Bernard's a good number 2 guy. And Joe Burrow's been fantastic. And going forward, the Bengals just have to draft defense, some more defense, and another defensive player.
More defense, Jared.
Like this next year's draft, unless you want to take an O-lineman, I want all 7 picks to be defensive players.
All defense.
Unless you're taking an O-lineman in like the 4th round. Mm-hmm. But you got to go defense. And they're going to be, they're going to probably have a top 8 pick this year. So they should be able to get, add a stellar defensive prospect. So if they just draft defense moving forward, I think in I wouldn't say 3. I'll go more towards the 4 or 5. They're going to be really good. The next one is a lot of it depends on if they can get a quarterback, cuz I think their defense is really good, but it
Okay.
all depends on getting a quarterback, and they have a young quarterback right now, but I think they need to move on.
Hmm.
And that's going to be the Washington football team. Like
Wow. Wow, Jared,
I
not a Dwayne Haskins fan. Huh?
no, I don't think he's the answer. He's an okay placeholder, but he's not the answer. But where I'm going to start is I think they have a good enough defensive line where their defense could be pretty good if they add a corner and a safety maybe, or a linebacker and a safety, something like that. And this is kind of the complete opposite of the Bengals. Like they need to draft offense, 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 offense. So, get a quarterback, get some wide receivers, get a running back. Now, Antonio Gibson hasn't looked horrible, but I don't know if he's their number one option, going forward 3, 4 years down the line. I don't know. He might be, he might not. We'll see. Time will tell. But I think they got pieces defensively where, they're going to come out one year and, it seems every maybe 3, 4 years, you just get this dominant defense that carries a
Right.
team. I think
Right.
they
I
could
would say
have
that's correct. Yeah.
I think they could have a year like that. So if they just get if they just get a little bit better offensively, I think they could have a good enough defense in 3, 4 years to carry them to a 12-4 type of record.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, Jared. I think that in these few years, we could definitely see them turn into almost a little bit of a Pittsburgh Steelers defense, where last year their offense was really struggling and having a bad time, but that defense just kind of led them to wins, which we could definitely see out of them. So, yeah, I like those picks.
All right, Brennan. Well, that kind of wraps up the pick segment here. And as we move on, we definitely got to give a shout out to My Bookie Sports. And Brendan, My Bookie Sports are in full swing, and I want to help you take advantage of those sports investments when getting in on the action. 12
All
ounce
right.
sport 12 ounce sports has officially partnered with mybookie.ag to get you the best deal possible. When you sign up on mybookie.ag, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000 when you punch in that promo code 12 ounce sports. Get that money, that's 12 ounce sports, when signing up on mybookie.ag to get your deposit matched up to $1,000. And once again, you're listening to James and the Agent here on 12 ounce sports. James out tonight. Guest star here tonight, good old friend Brendan Betty, myself, Jared the Nylon Agent. Brendan, let's keep rolling.
Let's keep rolling, Jared. Let's start it off.
All right, so we kind of want to talk a little bit of fantasy football. We kind of turned it into more of just talking about some certain players we've liked, we haven't liked, or we've thought, hey, they are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So you can kind of take it the fantasy route. You can kind of take it just overall how they're playing. But I know you picked 5 guys. I picked 5 guys. We'll see if we have enough time to get through everyone. But who's the first guy you want to talk about overall?
Honestly, Jared, I was going to start off with one guy, but now I'm going to change my first one that I want to talk about. And the first guy that I want to talk about a little bit, because he is just having a monstrous season this year, and I think that he deserves to be talked about, and that's Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. That man is on fire right now, Jared. I was looking through the stats a little bit this morning. He has thrown for 1,038 passing yards, 10 passing touchdowns, and he's already almost at 100 yards and 2 rushing TDs. I just seeing how this man has played so far for this Buffalo Bills team. I thought coming into the season that the defense was going to be the thing that I watched the most when watching the Buffalo Bills games. But instead, I'm finding myself watching this young quarterback that was drafted 7th in the draft, Jared. I was wanting to walk through the draft, and I watched that he got picked. He got picked after both Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. And one of my questions earlier was going to be to ask you if maybe he should have been picked before Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. And I mean, my answer would be yes. I don't know what yours would be, but I really think that could be something that comes into play later. And I mean, he could definitely, in my opinion, be the best QB out of that draft. I mean, a lot of the things that the scouts talked about with him when he first came out was that it's going to take him a few years to really get in the motions, to really get that deep ball going, to get his accuracy up. And we're already seeing him in his third season already becoming that franchise guy for the Bills. I mean, they look tough, Jared, and I think that them and the Patriots are going to have a dogfight to see who can win that division. And honestly, I think my first player has to be Josh Allen, and he's way overperformed for me, Jared. In exclamation marks, way overperformed for me.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, the only thing I would say to counteract your point, how much is it have to do that they played the Jets and the Dolphins in the first 2 weeks?
I was a little worried about that because I did look at the first two games that he played against those two teams that I thought that he would definitely light up. And that's why I really watched game 3, because he got to go up against the Rams, who I don't think is a Super Bowl contending team, but I think that their defense is very good with Aaron Donald right up there in the front, with also Jalen Ramsey in the back, and they have a lot of players in between that are good as well. And I thought that was going to be Josh Allen's real test. And honestly, through watching the game, the issue with the game wasn't Josh Allen. It was the defense a little bit. They let them come back after Josh Allen and the Bills put them up, and they let them come back. And I thought Josh Allen at the end, I mean, they got lucky with a pass interference call, I think, a little bit. But, I think Josh Allen led the team and led them down the field and got that victory against the Rams. And I think after watching that victory against the Rams, I think that makes probably – it kind of proves to me that he's going to continue to be that guy throughout the season. I'll look forward to maybe a little bit of a stronger matchup than the Rams, but I think that he's way blown over my expectations so far this season.
Fair enough. All right, Brendan, I'm going to go to the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
Wide receiver position.
Oh.
His name's Amari Cooper.
His name's Amari Cooper.
And
you could have picked 3 different ones, Jared.
And is there a guy that is just like doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing more than Amari Cooper?
Probably not.
Like, he's just
Probably
solid.
Not.
Like, yeah. he doesn't have a touchdown on the year. He doesn't have these flashy numbers, but he's gone 81 yards, 100 yards, and 86 yards with 10 catches, 6 catches, 9 catches. So, solid year. Not bad. On track for well over 1,000 yards receiving. Like, well on track. But, like, it's just not spectacular.
It's not what we thought. Right.
Like, it's not even what we thought, because I think if you're talking about an Amari Cooper season, this is right in line with it. It's just like, I don't know. Just, I look at his numbers, and they just scream, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly what he's doing. Do you think that might have something a little bit, Jared, to do with those 2 wide receivers that are lined up with him? With CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup? You think they're taking some more touches away from him as the season goes?
Yeah, because people still view Amari as the number 1 guy, so he's getting double teamed a little bit more, or he's getting extra protection against him and things like that. But, like, it's just like, I feel like it just fits him as a career player, where he's good and he's great, but he just does exactly what you expect of him. No more, no less. He'll have a game with maybe 2 touchdowns, but he'll have probably less yards or something. Like, it's weird, man. Like, no matter what Amari Cooper does, he always ends up averaging about 8 catches for 90 yards.
So do you think that this will be, like, with him for the rest of the season? Like, do you think that this is what we can expect? Or do you maybe see him taking a little bit of a jump?
I think he's just going to be straight up solid all year long.
Straight up solid.
Like, just solid. Which, hey, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
No, for fantasy people, that's definitely not a bad thing.
I just find it funny when I look at Amari Cooper and I go, that's just the most solid numbers I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have a game with, like, 2 catches, 20 yards, and then another one with, like, 12 catches, 160, and 2 touchdowns to average each other out. You don't have – you just have solid games. And it just – I don't even know why we're talking about it, because it's really stupid in the grand scheme of things, and it's not really good radio. But, like, I just find it funny how just average and solid he plays.
Right. Like, we're not talking about him, but we are talking about him because of his averageness. Yeah, I could, or not even average is probably the wrong word. In reality, like you said, it's just
he's doing what he's supposed to do,
yeah,
which is above average for him.
Yeah, which is, of course, for him being the number one receiver on this, supposed to be very, very good Dallas Cowboys team, we expected him to do that on the field.
Mm-hmm. All right, who's your next guy?
All right, Jared. So for my next guy, I want to talk about the reigning MVP a little bit. I want to talk about Lamar Jackson. So, honestly, I was a little torn on this one. I was thinking about, maybe making a little bit of a bold statement, and I think I really am going to go that way. But he at this moment in time, he's kind of right where I thought he was going to be. But at the same time, it has been very underwhelming. Very underwhelming for what I've seen. I think Monday night might be making me a little bit more biased. I was pretty disappointed with how I thought he played out there. I really thought him and the Chiefs were going to have, a showdown. But, his stats for Monday night, 97 passing yards, 83 rushing yards. And that's not the Lamar that I expected to be out there. That's not the guy that I thought, should got the MVP last year. And, I think you and me both agreed at the beginning of the season that we expected him to, digress a little bit. We all thought that maybe his season last year just maybe wasn't repeatable, especially for how much running that he did. That doesn't last for long in the NFL usually. So, but I think just looking through the season so far, he's only thrown for a little bit more than 500 yards. He's only at 180 rushing yards, which I know, for a QB, that's usually pretty decent. But for him, for what we saw last year, it isn't decent yet. And I think that if that Ravens team doesn't want to rely so much on that defense, he's really going to have to step it up and kind of prove in these next few weeks that he's the guy. And I think that he has a great opportunity to do that, Jared. Because listen to their schedule for the next 3 games, Jared. You ready? They are going to be playing the Washington football team, the Bengals, and Philly for their next 3 games.
He's going to rack up numbers.
I think that those are 3 teams that we should definitely see last year MVP Lamar going on. And the only reason we don't see it is because they've already put up all the points in the first half. And they're just going to, relax for the second half. But I think those are 3 teams that we need to see him kind of come out and break out of his shell like he did last year and prove that he is the reigning MVP for this Ravens team. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I can't disagree. He looked terrible against Kansas City. He didn't
scary.
Like, you don't have 100 passing yards in today's NFL. Like, Jeff Driscoll gets that. So,
right.
That's definitely tough. It's going to be interesting moving forward. I definitely thought he was, for sure going to regress, which he has, which I think was a little bit more than obvious just because of how good he was last year. But I don't know, man. He's got to do it against better teams. And that's obviously something you're not really going to see here in the next coming weeks with what you just kind of rattled off of who they're playing. Like, he's going to rack up numbers. So the question is, down the stretch, playing better teams, how are they going to perform? You look at their schedule down the line. Like, how is he going to play against the Steelers?
Yeah.
Like,
that's a tough defense. The Chiefs' defense, in reality, it is a good defensive line, but I think that Steelers' defense has a beat. And it's a tough defense.
So you mentioned through the Eagles games, flip it. Yeah. Look at the schedule then coming up. You go Steelers, Colts, Pats, Titans, Steelers.
Wow. Yeah. So you go on a nice 5-game tear there where you're playing top teams instead.
Lamar doesn't play well. They don't win many of those games. How do you view Lamar? You know what I mean? That's the tough part. That's going to be a tough stretch for him. And I think that'll show a lot. It'll be interesting going forward to see if he shows up in big games. So.
It will be. All right, Jared, who's your next player?
All right, so you briefly mentioned him. I'm going to go down to Atlanta. I'm going to go to Todd Gurley.
All right.
And I don't think the expectations were sky high to start the season, but I still think he's underperforming. And it's more not even, the numbers look okay, but it's more the efficiency and things like that's bothered me so far. I mean, you look at the numbers: 56 yards rushing, 61 yards rushing, 80 yards rushing. So a little bit better this past week, 14 for 80 and a touchdown. But like week 2 against Dallas, who, mind you, not the best defense, 21 carries for 61 yards. And they were up massive in that game where he should have just been getting carry after carry after carry. And I think you have to put that loss a little bit on Todd Gurley not being efficient down the stretch on trying to get a first down or two to run some more clock. And I mean, 14 for 56 in week 1, that's not very good either. I mean, that's, that's 3.3 yards a carry, something like that. So I think Atlanta was expecting him to be a little bit better. I think I also thought he'd be better earlier in the season because I thought he was going to start off hot and then just get worse and worse and worse as the year went on. Maybe it goes the opposite way, but I would say after 3 weeks, Todd Gurley has been underperforming.
Well, I mean, honestly, Jared, when you first mentioned his name, I was like, you know what, maybe I should go look and see what I can see about this guy. And I was like, is he really having is he kind of having an off season? And honestly, when I looked, the first thing that kind of jumped out to me, and let me know if it jumped out to you too, was that honestly, like one of the things that the Falcons have kind of been known for in the past few years is throwing and checking down to their running backs and getting them yards like in the passing game. And like, we've seen Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, even Ito Smith when he was there. Like, we've seen them like get passes and checkdowns, and they've gotten over 100-yard games. Todd Gurley's first 3 games of the season for passing wise, he had 2 receptions for 1 yard, no yards and no catches in the second game, and then 1 reception for 2 yards in the third game. This man has totaled 3 receptions for 3 yards, Jared. This is an Atlanta team that loves to throw the ball, and I think that is securely underwhelming for him. I mean, we did see him do that a little bit for the Rams, but I think that this was something I expected that the Atlanta Falcons were going to use for him, and it's definitely not so far. So I would definitely have to agree with you on this underwhelming performance from Gurley so far.
And he was a big part of the passing game in LA, actually. I'm pretty sure he was close to 1,000 yards a couple seasons.
Was he? Was he? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so
he
definitely
was
more of a disappointment than I thought. I mean, for only 3 catches for 3 yards on an Atlanta team that is historically thrown to running backs is.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So in his career, I'm trying to get this right.
Because, like seeing how little he's being used in the passing game, at first I thought it might be because, maybe they were up in a few of these games, but looking over the game stats, I mean, Atlanta was throwing the ball off as they like to.
So
he wasn't in there.
So here you go. So his career best receiving is 64 catches for 788 yards.
That's a pretty decent.
Oh, that's really good. That was 2017. And then in 2018, he bounces back with 59 for 580. So he's always been a big part of the passing game. And he had 6 receiving touchdowns that first year and then 4 the next season. He's got a career 221 and 2,093 yards. He's always been a big part of the passing game. And to have 3 catches for 3 yards 3 games is awful.
It's awful, especially because those games were really all kind of close. I mean, Atlanta was throwing the ball for most of those games to try to either kind of get back or win the game. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like they're just not running. It's not like they're not throwing the ball. They were throwing the ball, just not to him. So.
Alrighty, let's go on to your next player. I'm really hoping you pick this guy right here because I want to talk about him too, but we'll see where you go.
You want to talk about him too? Oh, geez. Well, I don't want to disappoint you, Jared, but I'm going to go out with a guy that I kind of have to talk about because I think his performance has been so underwhelming.
Yes, I think you're going my direction.
Okay, good. I think I got to talk about another quarterback.
Yep. Say his name.
It's going to be Carson
Wentz. Yeah.
Talk about Carson
God,
Wentz.
He's been bad.
Gosh, so bad. I really didn't know if I was going to jump on the hype train for him leading this Eagles team to the playoffs. And I honestly don't know what I'm more tired of, Jared. I don't know if I'm more tired of always hearing that Carson Wentz is going to be this guy, going to be the future. He's the person to lead us to this promised land, when really all we've gotten in return is one pretty decent rookie season, not even, and then injuries, and then when he is healthy and they get rid of Nick Foles, who, by the way, I mean, is now the starter for the Bears and looks pretty decent. And, we expected all this, and what has he done this season? I mean, he's thrown for 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, so 2-to-1 interception-touchdown ratio, and he's fumbled, and, yeah, he's weirdly ran the ball a little bit and gotten 2 touchdowns, but, I mean, they're 0-2-1, Jared. And in my opinion, honestly, I don't know if you feel the same way, but a tie to the Bengals when they're this young and have that bad of a defense for the Eagles is pretty much a loss, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that's anything to be proud of as an Eagles fan that you tied against the Bengals, even though they're still young and whatnot. And honestly, I really think that the Eagles fans have been promised that hero and franchise QB, and he's in Chicago now, Jared. That QB's in Chicago now, and here's their next 3 games, Jared. Here's their next 3 games for Carson Wentz, as they've gone 0-2-1. They have to go play for the next 3 games: San Francisco, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Ravens. I mean, this team could be looking at 0-5-1. I mean, what do you do at that point if you're? I mean, do you jump the gun and go out there and call down to the field and say it's time to put Jalen Hurts in? I mean, is this where we're gonna go if you go to 0-5-1? I mean, I honestly don't know any other option, because you can't let Wentz keep going. You might as well just start preparing for the next season with Hurts. I mean, I know that's kind of a bold and jump gun statement, Jared, but I mean, I just can't jump on that Carson Wentz is the future wagon anymore, as a lot of the Eagles fans have.
And it's interesting. Are we seeing maybe why the Eagles took Jalen Hurts? Like, did they maybe
it
like
confused a lot of people.
Like you never know. It makes you think like maybe they were like, okay, maybe they started to realize something last year or something. But yeah, I mean, the 7 turnovers is awful, with 6 of them being interceptions. I mean, that's just obviously something's not clicking, and I don't think you can blame your receivers anymore when you have 6 interceptions in 3 games. Like, nothing to blame there. And that's always been a thing with Carson Wentz is, whether or not, his receivers are good enough and things like that. 6 interceptions, that's just not really an argument anymore, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
and, their first 3 games were against, the Washington football team, the Rams, and the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, really only one good team right now, I would say.
Yeah, if they would have lost to the Rams and they would be right now 2-1, I'd be like, oh, Carson Wentz, he's doing his job. Like, he did his job there. But, 0-2-1. I keep almost saying 0-3 because I just want to spit it out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Alrighty, so only a couple minutes left this show here, so we're going to kind of move on from the players and just get a little bit of NBA Finals talk. I know that game 1's underway. I believe it's 16-10 Heat right now. Ooh, oh, wow. Watch out, Heat up 6 early.
Watch out.
But let's just, since we don't have too much time left, let's just start off. Who you got, who's winning, how many games, and give me the Finals MVP.
All right, you want me to start it off?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, so for me, what were your 3? You wanted me to
So
say
who's winning, how many games?
Heat in 7.
Okay.
Heat in 7 for me.
Okay, wow.
And you said Finals MVP?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to shock you a little bit here, Jared. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
My Finals MVP is going to be Bam Adebayo. I think that man is going to not only score well, but I think that honestly, defense is going to reign supreme in this series for him. I really wanted to say Andre Iguodala, but I didn't say it. So I really wanted to, Jared. I really wanted to, but yeah, Heat in 7, and Bam Adebayo's going to have a series. That's what I'm excited for. What do you got, Jared?
I'm very opposite. I'm going to go Lakers in 5. I think Heat will take game 1 or 2, like like everyone has against the Lakers. They'll take game 1 or 2. It'll be 1-1 after 2 basically, and then the Lakers are going to win the next 4 and win the NBA Finals.
Well,
I don't really see it any other way.
okay.
I think they're that much better of a team. Like I said, they're going to lose game 1 or 2. Don't get me wrong. They're not going to sweep the Heat. The Heat will win game 1 or 2. 1,000% they do that.
It's funny you keep talking about them losing game 1 because I had a fun little stat. And my fun little stat that I had was that LeBron James, so far in his whole finals career,
He hasn't been good in game 1.
1-8 in game 1.
Oof.
1-8.
That's what I'm saying, man. They will drop game 1 or 2.
When he's been favored, 1-1. So, but still.
God, that's crazy that they've only been that him in that many finals. So he's 1-8, and he's only been favored twice in 9 games.
2 finals in the 9 finals that he's been in. Yep.
Wow, that's nuts.
That's correct. Yep.
That is crazy. So let me take a guess on which ones he was favored in. It had to be the first 2 when he was in Miami, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was,
but not the next one. Not the third one against the Spurs. The Spurs were favored?
I believe so, because I believe that the Kawhi Leonard Spurs were favored in that one.
Okay, gotcha. That was my guess, because really, those are really the only finals that
Correct. I believe that it was those 2 Heat teams that were actually the teams that he was favored with. So, honestly, Jared, something that I kind of team could really do with the players that they have, I think championship back in 2004 because of how much they really seem to be the same. I mean, Kobe and Shaq, fun fact for you, Jared, Kobe and Shaq were the leading scorers for 4 out of the 5 of those games, and they still lost. And I think that could be the same way part 2 here, and I really think that the Heat could take this in 7. I think they're a tough enough team to do that.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, I think we're going to end it there, Brendan. Got a little NBA
Sounds
Finals
good.
talk. I definitely want to flip that here on the TV and get watching, so excited for that. Hey, man, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for replacing JP tonight, and I think it went well.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me, Jared. I couldn't have had more fun out here, man. Glad to talk with you guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. All right, thank you everyone for listening to 12 Ounce Sports. Once again, James and the agent. James replaced tonight by good old friend there, Brendan. He was the one bringing you some hot takes, some cold takes, just having a good time. So thanks for listening again on 12 Ounce Sports. Stay tuned for the next show as well, starting here at 9:30. James and the agent will be back next Wednesday, 8 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest